Somewhere in rural Tennessee, a man named Gerald opened his electricity bill in January and laughed out loud. Not because it was funny, because it was $63 lower than the month before, and he hadn't done a single thing differently, except add a $30 coil of copper pipe to his water heater setup. $63 in 1 month from a coil of pipe. His neighbor didn't believe him, so Gerald showed him the bills, side by side, 2 months in a row. The neighbor went home and started researching. And then that neighbor told someone else, and that someone else posted about it online, and the comments filled up with people saying the same thing. Wait, this is real? This is legal? Why hasn't anyone told us about this? That's the question that keeps coming up every single time this topic surfaces. Not how does it work, not where do I buy one. The first reaction, almost universally, is why didn't I know about this already? And that's exactly what we're going to answer today. Water heating is one of the most expensive things happening inside your home right now. The Department of Energy puts it at roughly 18% of the average household's total energy bill. 18%. For most families in America, that is the second largest energy expense they have, sitting right behind heating and cooling the air. It runs every single day quietly, whether you think about it or not, cycling on and cycling off, keeping 40 or 50 gallons of water hot just in case you need it. And for decades, the solution to that cost has been sold to you as buy a better water heater, a newer one, a more efficient one, a tankless one, a heat pump one, solutions that cost hundreds, sometimes thousands of dollars. Nobody put a $30 coil in front of you and said, start here. But that's exactly what we're doing today. Because the coil is real, the savings are real, and the only thing standing between you and 2/3 off your water heating bill is about 45 minutes and a trip to the hardware store. So what exactly is this coil? Because when most people first hear about it, they picture something complicated, something that belongs in an engineer's basement or a commercial boiler room, something that requires permits and professionals and a check you don't want to write. And the reality is almost embarrassingly simple. What we're talking about is a heat exchanger, specifically a passive heat exchanger built from a length of copper tubing, sometimes as little as 20 feet of it, coiled into a tight spiral and placed inside your water heater's flue pipe or wrapped around the exhaust stack, depending on your setup. That's it. That is the whole device. A coil of copper pipe. You can hold it in one hand. Here's the principle behind it, and it's so straightforward it almost feels like a trick. When your water heater fires up, gas, propane, doesn't matter, it burns fuel to heat the water in the tank. And while it's doing that, a tremendous amount of heat is moving up through the center flue and escaping straight out the top of the unit and into your attic or out through your roof. That heat is just gone. You paid for it, you generated it, and it flew away. Studies have put the waste heat leaving through a standard residential water heater flue at somewhere between 20 and 30% of the total energy the burner produces. You are throwing away, on average, about a quarter of every dollar you spend heating water. Every single day. The coil intercepts that heat before it escapes. Cold water from your supply line runs through the copper tubing, and as it passes through or around that hot flue, it absorbs the heat that would have otherwise vanished. By the time that water reaches your tank, it's already warm, sometimes significantly warm, depending on your climate and your system. And a water heater that receives warm incoming water doesn't have to work nearly as hard to bring it up to temperature. Less work means less fuel. Less fuel means a lower bill. This concept has a name. It's called a drain water heat recovery system when applied to shower water, and a flue heat recovery coil or economizer when applied to exhaust gases from your water heater. The technology is not new. Industrial facilities have used heat recovery systems for over a century. Large buildings, breweries, commercial kitchens, they all recapture waste heat because at scale the math is undeniable. The only thing that changed is that somebody scaled it down, costed it out, and realized you could replicate the core function with a roll of copper pipe from the hardware store and a handful of fittings. So why haven't you heard about this? Honestly, a few reasons, and we're going to go deeper on one of them in a later section. But the short version is this. There is no industry built around selling you a $30 solution. There's no manufacturer with a national advertising budget. There's no commission structure rewarding a plumber for recommending it. The Coil doesn't have a brand name. It doesn't come in a box with a warranty card and a QR code. It lives in the overlap between DIY plumbing knowledge and basic thermodynamics. And that overlap doesn't have a lobby. What it does have is a track record. Homeowners who have installed versions of this setup report consistent, measurable reductions in gas and propane usage, and the numbers cluster around that same figure we mentioned earlier. Not 1%, not 5%. Reductions that cut the water heating portion of their bill by half or more. And you built it yourself for about $30. That's what we're actually talking about here. So let's talk about why it actually works. Because the savings aren't magic, and they aren't a trick. They come from a principle of physics that has been understood for well over a century. And once you see it, you'll wonder why you ever let it go to waste in the first place. Here's the situation inside your home right now. Your clothes dryer is running, or your furnace is cycling, or your wood stove is putting out heat. And all of that energy is doing its job, warming something, moving through your space. But then it's done. It exhausts. It vents. It bleeds away into the walls, or up through a flue, or out through a duct. And it takes a significant amount of thermal energy with it. Energy you already paid for. Energy that just leaves. At the same time, on the other side of your house, your water heater is working hard to do one thing: raise the temperature of cold incoming water. That cold water arrives from the municipal supply or your well at somewhere between 40 and 60 degrees Fahrenheit, depending on where you live and what time of year it is. Your water heater then has to burn gas or run electric resistance elements to drag that temperature all the way up to around 120 degrees. That's a gap of 60, 70, sometimes 80 degrees that your water heater is responsible for closing, entirely on its own, entirely using energy you're paying for at market rate. The coil is what happens when you introduce those two problems to each other. A heat exchanger, at its most fundamental level, is just a device that allows heat to transfer from one fluid to another without the two fluids ever mixing. In our case, one fluid is hot exhaust gas or waste heat, and the other is your cold incoming water supply. You route the cold water through a copper coil that passes through or wraps around the heat source, a dryer exhaust duct, a flue pipe, a stove, and the heat that would have simply escaped instead gets absorbed by the water moving through that coil. Copper matters here. It's not an arbitrary choice. Copper is one of the best thermal conductors available in a form you can actually bend, shape, and connect with standard plumbing fittings. Heat moves through copper pipe rapidly and efficiently. So as cold water travels slowly through that coil, the pipe walls are aggressively transferring heat from the outside environment into the water on the inside. By the time that water exits the coil and enters your water heater, it's no longer arriving at 50 degrees. It might be arriving at 80 or 90, or in a well-designed installation with a strong heat source, even higher. And this is where the math becomes almost immediately obvious. Your water heater's entire job is to close that temperature gap. If the gap was 70 degrees and now it's 30 degrees, your water heater doesn't have to work nearly as hard. It fires less often. It runs shorter cycles. It consumes a fraction of the fuel or electricity it would have otherwise used. The savings aren't coming from some exotic technology or an unproven claim. They're coming from the straightforward reality that your heating appliance is doing less work, because you've already done part of that work for free using heat that was heading for the exhaust anyway. This is called a drain water heat recovery system in some configurations, and a flue gas heat exchanger in others. The terminology varies depending on the heat source you're tapping, but the thermodynamic principle is identical across all of them. You are capturing waste energy that exists in your home right now, in every heating cycle, every load of laundry, every fire in the stove, and you are redirecting it into the one place it's most useful. The efficiency gains are real because the waste is real. The math works because physics doesn't negotiate. And $30 worth of copper pipe, routed correctly through a heat source that's already running, can permanently reduce the workload on your water heater for as long as both systems are in operation. That's the science. And it has no moving parts. Now here is where things get interesting. Because if this is so simple, if the science is this straightforward, if the materials cost $30 and the physics has been understood for over a century, then the obvious question is why you've never seen this on a home improvement show. Why your plumber has never mentioned it. Why the salesperson at the hardware store didn't walk you over to a copper pipe display and explain exactly what to do with it. The answer isn't complicated, but it is worth sitting with for a moment. The water heating industry in the United States sells somewhere in the range of 10 million new water heaters every year. That's a significant market, tens of billions of dollars. And the business model behind that market depends almost entirely on one thing: the assumption that when you need hot water, you go back to them. You buy the tank. You buy the replacement tank. You buy the more efficient tank. You buy the upgrade. The product cycle runs on the premise that efficiency is something you purchase, not something you engineer out of what you already own. A $30 copper coil doesn't fit that model. It doesn't generate a warranty. It doesn't have a brand name. It doesn't require a service contract or a certified installer or a follow-up maintenance visit 3 years down the road. It is a one-time expenditure that permanently reduces your dependence on the primary product these companies are selling. That's not a conspiracy. That's just a market incentive. And market incentives shape what gets promoted, what gets shelf space, what gets featured in the advertising you see, and what gets quietly left out of the conversation. Utility companies have a similar relationship with this kind of solution. They sell energy. A customer who uses 2/3 less energy to heat water is, by definition, a less profitable customer. Some utilities do run efficiency programs, and some of those programs are genuinely useful. But notice what tends to qualify for rebates and incentives. Heat pump water heaters that cost $1,000 or more, smart thermostats with subscription features, solar installations that require a licensed contractor. The solutions that qualify for official support are almost always the solutions that keep money flowing through an established system. A coil of copper pipe routed through your furnace exhaust does not require anyone's involvement but yours. There's also a licensing dynamic that quietly suppresses this kind of knowledge. The skilled trades are built around complexity. A plumber or HVAC technician charges for expertise that most homeowners genuinely don't have. And that expertise is valuable. There are plenty of jobs where you absolutely want a professional. But when a solution is this simple, when it genuinely is a coil of pipe and a basic understanding of which direction water flows, the professional infrastructure around home systems has very little incentive to spread the word. It doesn't generate a service call. It doesn't require a permit in most jurisdictions. It just works, quietly, for years, without anyone writing an invoice. None of this means the people in these industries are acting in bad faith. Most of them have probably never thought about it this directly. The system simply isn't designed to reward the conversation. It's designed to reward the transaction. And so the knowledge sits. It circulates in energy efficiency forums and homesteading communities, and among the kind of people who read technical manuals the way other people read novels. It's been legal the whole time. It's been effective the whole time. It just hasn't been profitable for the right people to tell you about it. Until now, apparently, you've stumbled onto a video that doesn't have anything to sell you. So let's talk about what actually happens when someone installs one of these things. Not the theory, not the projected savings based on optimal conditions. The real numbers, from real households, after the novelty wears off and the water bill arrives. There's a homeowner in rural Tennessee who documented his first full year with a drain water heat recovery coil installed on a single shower. He's not an engineer. He's a retired school teacher who got tired of his propane bill. His water heater was running about 12 hours a day to maintain temperature and keep up with demand. After installation, he logged his propane usage every month for a year and compared it to the previous year. His water heating costs dropped by 61%. Not 2/3 exactly, but close enough that he started telling his neighbors, who mostly didn't believe him until he showed them the receipts. A family in the Pacific Northwest with 4 kids, and anyone who has raised 4 kids knows what shower demand looks like, installed a coil on their main bathroom drain and tracked their electric bill for 6 months. Their baseline water heating cost had been running around $90 a month in winter. After installation, that number settled around $34. They've since added a second coil to the guest bathroom. Their total investment was under $60 in materials. These aren't outliers. Community forums dedicated to energy efficiency are full of these reports, going back years. The numbers cluster. People consistently report savings between 50 and 68% on water heating specifically, with the higher end of that range showing up in households where shower use is heavy and incoming groundwater is cold, which describes a significant portion of the country for a significant portion of the year. And here's the thing that keeps coming up in these accounts. People say the system is boring. They mean that as a compliment. There's nothing to maintain. Nothing breaks. The coil doesn't have a filter to replace, or a sensor to calibrate, or a warranty that quietly expires. It sits there in the basement or the utility closet and does exactly what physics says it should do, and then the bill comes and the number is smaller, and that's the whole story. The objection you'll sometimes hear is that individual results vary. And they do. If you live somewhere with mild winters and warm incoming groundwater, your baseline is already lower, so your savings will be proportionally smaller. If your household uses the dishwasher as the primary hot water draw and rarely showers, the recovery coil has less to work with. These are real factors, but the underlying principle doesn't vary. Energy that was being poured down the drain is now being kept in the system. Every household that uses hot water and sends that water down a drain is starting from the same basic physics. The question is just how much of that lost energy you want to recover, and how much you're willing to spend to do it. $60 seems to be the answer a lot of people are landing on. So let's talk about the actual thing, the coil itself. Because the name sounds complicated and the concept sounds like it might require a plumber, a permit, and 3 weekends you don't have. It doesn't. The device you're looking for goes by a few names. Drain water heat recovery unit, gravity film heat exchanger, power pipe. Some people just call it a wrap coil. What you're buying or building is essentially a length of copper tubing wound tightly around a vertical drain pipe. That's it. That's the whole apparatus. The cold water coming in from the street spirals around the outside of the pipe, while the warm wastewater spirals down the inside, and the heat transfers across the copper wall between them. Physics does the rest. If you want to buy one pre-made, you're looking at roughly $30 to $200 depending on length and diameter, with the shorter units landing at the low end. A 4-foot section handles most households. You don't need the longest one on the market to see real results. If you want to build one, you need copper tubing, a section of drain pipe, pipe straps, and solder or compression fittings. Hardware store. One afternoon. There are step-by-step guides online, and the installation comes down to cutting into your main drain stack, wrapping the coil tight, and connecting the cold water inlet to the coil's output. Most people do this without a licensed plumber. Most local codes allow it. Check yours first, but the answer is usually yes. No electricity, no moving parts. You connect it, you insulate the outside lightly if you want to maximize transfer, and then you walk away. The work is done the moment the first shower runs. So here is where you actually do something with everything you just learned. Pull up your water heater. Look at where the cold water supply line connects to it. That is where this whole thing starts. Measure the vertical run of your main drain stack nearby. 4 feet of clearance is all you need. Then search for drain water heat recovery unit, or if you want to build it yourself, search for copper pipe heat exchanger DIY. You will find what you are looking for in under 10 minutes. Write down your current water heating bill. Keep it somewhere. Install the coil or have it installed, and then wait 60 days. Look at that number again. That is the experiment. That is the proof. Not a sales pitch, not a promise from a manufacturer, just your own utility bill telling you the truth. $30. One afternoon. 2/3 less energy heating water for the rest of the time you live in that house.